Hello and welcome back to the Naked Expat channel. Now I know what you're thinking, oh God, he's in front of his whiteboard again, here comes the lecture. But I've had a couple of comments on some of my previous videos about property, overseas properties and expats, and with regards to not arguments but dialogue, because at the end of the day we're all in this together and it should be really a constructive dialogue rather than a monologue. And really there are certain pitfalls and certain advantages of buying property abroad. Fundamentally, my belief, which I want to instill on people, is it's all about pre-planning, yeah? Proactive rather than reactive, because sometimes otherwise it's just simply too late. And if my channel can basically help people not make mistakes initially, then if you do become an expat and move away from your country of domicile and become ordinary resident in another country, potentially it can be a smoother transition and you can have a more productive, benefit and secure future. I'm an expat. I have nothing against being an expat. I think that the vast majority of people would benefit becoming an expat. Certainly in retirement, when you've worked your ass off all of your life and you want to benefit from a warmer climate, a nicer environment, and maybe not the crabby attitudes back home in maybe the West, you know, which is very, very common. And I subscribe to that kind of philosophy, absolutely, with all my heart. What I don't want to see is people making major mistakes. And property, like getting involved with a younger partner, is an extremely emotive subject and you touch nerves with people. And I've had a couple of comments which I'll come on to, but what I wanted to clarify specifically for UK expats or potential UK expats, when I was talking on my estate planning and inheritance tax issues for UK expats, guys, don't turn off if you're not a UK expat, because movement of assets is important for everybody to understand. Whatever the rules are in your country, you need to be asking yourself these questions beforehand. What happens to my assets on my demise? What happens to tax on my income, unearned income, pension, etc.? All these things need to be asked in advance so they don't turn around and bite you in the ass later. Now, with regards to inheritance tax, I think I am doing people a favour by letting them know, if you are a married British couple and you are both British citizens, you both have what's known as an inheritance tax threshold of currently £325,000, yeah? Now, if you've got an inheritance tax threshold of £325,000 each, easy to do the maths, £650,000 before you have to worry about inheritance tax, if you both use your allowances. The problem is, if your spouse happens to be non-British citizen, like for example, a British guy married to a Thai or Filipino or Spanish or Portuguese, whatever, American, they don't get their nil rate band. So it's only yours. There's only one lot of inheritance tax nil rate band of 325,000. So then what? Well, now you've got to consider, because of the changes to inheritance tax in the UK, the inheritance tax is liable on all of your UK held assets only. So when I'm saying to people, perhaps if perhaps you're considering buying property in the UK, don't buy property more than 325,000. Keep it lower than that. Okay, it might grow in value and be over the inheritance tax threshold in the future. Nothing's an exact science, but start off on the right track, yeah? So if you've got if you're in the UK already looking to move abroad, what happens if you've got a house that's worth 500k? Yeah? Let's say you got a house that's worth 500,000, yeah? And you're in the UK and you're looking to retire to, say, Spain or Asia or wherever, you know. If you leave that house, you could rent it. If you leave that house in the UK, what are you going to do with it? Well, if you're wealthy, you might just say, oh, family can live in it, rent free. Great. Most people can't afford to do that. Certainly not most people watching my YouTube channel. And you might be worried about it. It might be a burden, yeah? 500,000 is a nice house in the UK, yeah? About, guys, in foreign money, it's like 650,000, 650,000 US dollars, whatever. It's a reasonable sized house. Now, what are you going to do with it? Well, you want to go and live abroad. Well, you've got options. It's worth, if you've got a foreign spouse or you're on your own, you don't want to leave it in the UK, do you? Like that, because you know that only 325,000 Is IHT free in the future? Anything above 325,000, you're going to pay 40% inheritance. Currently, 40%. You're going to pay 40% on 175,000. Not nice. Don't want to do that. That's being lethargic, being lazy, not doing anything. My suggestion in my previous video was sell the house. Sod it. Don't get emotionally tied to it. Sell the house. If you want to keep property in the UK, because funnily enough, a lot of people like investing in property, and yeah, it is an investment, and yeah, it does carry risk. A lot of people think that property is an absolute no-brainer. It's not. I'll come on to that later. But let's say you downsize and you buy a smaller house for 300,000. So it's not as big, yeah? But it's a property investment, and property longer term is generally a good investment in most instances. And it's in the UK, and it's less than the 325 nil rate band, so no inheritance tax. Yeah, it might grow over that in the future. Like I said, it's not an exact science, but it's less than the nil rate band, and you can use the other 200,000 to do with what the hell you want. Stick it offshore, go and spend it on racehorses for all I care. The main thing is outside of the UK. As long as it's outside of the UK, all of this is in the UK. So you want to keep it below the 325 if you can. The rest of it is anywhere offshore. Spain, Thailand, Portugal, wherever. Isle of Man, ring fencing, investment products, wherever you want, guys. I'm not telling you what to do with it. I can give you some ideas because that's what I want to do. That's just what I'm passionate about. And some other people say, oh, you sound really angry. No, I'm passionate, guys, because at the end of the day, why get hit in the nuts with inheritance tax when you can avoid it? And now with the changes in the UK, you're only liable to inheritance tax on your UK assets. So anything more than your nil rate band allowance, only one of them if you're single or your wife or spouse or civil partnership partner is not British. Both 325,000 times 2 if you're both British citizens, but British citizens only. And I'll come on to that because people that are rabbiting on about property and how property is necessarily a really good investment, yeah. But what's the really important thing that I just said in that last comment? Citizen. Nobody likes the boat people coming into the UK. Nobody in America likes the immigrants, legal or otherwise, coming up from the south into North America. Ask Donald Trump if you don't believe me. Nobody likes it. Everybody believes that if you're British, you should have more rights than foreigners. Funnily enough, the Filipinos believe that, the Thais believe it, the Spanish believe it, the Portuguese believe it, everybody believes it. So this is really important, pre-expat planning. Never ever forget you're a guest in another country. Never ever forget that you haven't got the same rights as a local citizen, and you never will have. And that comes down to any type of investment, any type of road traffic accident. You're the one in the wrong, because if you weren't there, it wouldn't have happened. And that applies to property as well. And I'll come on to it because it's very important that you consider it, especially people that criticize me because they're extolling the virtues of overseas property. Yeah, it's an investment and you can do potentially well. You can also lose the shirt off your back if you get it wrong. So it is with risk. It's not risk-free. Very few things in life are risk-free. That is all I'm saying, and I'm passionate about it. I'm not angry. If it fits you to buy an overseas property, fine. I said in the previous video, we're all equals, but we're all unique, and we are. We do have similar traits, and that's all I can hope to achieve with my YouTube channel. Touch on certain things and get you asking the questions that were important to you. Everybody has their own unique little traits and kinks and things that are slightly different. I can't hope to cover all of the bases. All I'm using is my experience as an expat and previously in food, nutrition and health, and obviously in international finance, to give you a few pointers that maybe you haven't thought of in the past. Now that's property in the UK, that's specific to UK expats or potential UK expats. Let's broaden this up to everybody else that might be watching. Right, in case you didn't notice, I had a little bit more of a wipe down. That's the wonderful of the edits, yeah? Right, now let's look at property and risk. If you invest in the stock market, is it risky? Yeah. If you ask somebody that's lost a lot of money investing in the stock market, what's their attitude towards the stock market? Wow, it's really risky. Same thing goes for cryptocurrency. If you ask a lot of people that have invested in cryptocurrency and they've lost a lot of money, what's their attitude going to be about cryptocurrency. Very risky, not interested. If you ask an investor that's done very well, or continues to do very well, trading in the stock market, you ask them about their attitude towards stock market investments, they're going to say, great investment. You ask somebody that's made a lot of money in cryptocurrency, what's their attitude towards cryptocurrency, Bitcoins, Ethereum, everything else? They're going to love it and highly recommend it. Everything comes with risk. Not investing comes with risk. It comes with inflationary risk because your money sat there doing nothing and the cost of living goes up. So not doing anything, in general terms, is not an option either. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. The object of today's video is to just get you guys thinking about risk and asking yourself a few more questions about property. Is it really a great thing if you're an expat? I've already touched on a few things, but let's roll back the clock a little bit. What I'd like to do is highlight a few things in the past because people have got very short memories, and we'll look at property and we'll look at equities and what's happened in the past. Appreciate this might be a little bit generic, but it's very, very interesting and hopefully it will get my point across. Now let's take the stock market, for example. What happened in October 1987? Black Friday stock market crash. You know, terrible, yeah? That won't be good. What else did we have after that? Oh, and the stock market crash, yeah? At the time, October 1987, everybody was like, oh my God, the end is nigh, you know, let's jump off the buildings. Same with the Great Depression in the 1920s in the States. Everybody jumping off buildings, committing suicide, losing their life savings, mass panic, you know, and there was a big depression afterwards. The stock market crash in October 1987, for you guys that remember it, for you guys that are like digital nomads and newbies, might not have even been born then, but believe you me, at the time, their shit hit the fan and everybody was panicking. Oh my God, the end is nigh, you know. And it was terrible. I think it was 600 odd points wiped off the Dow Jones virtually like in a day. And October 1987 was terrible. You asked anybody in October 87 or like early November 1987, let's go invest in the stock market. They'll go, are you nuts? No way. I mean, it was a terrible time. How long did it take to recover? Well, you know, for the sake of simplicity, it was back up to where it was July 1989. So it was approximately 1.6 years. Less than 2 years. 1 year, 6 months. From October 1987 to July 1989. It was back up trading at the levels it was before the crash. So, you know, it had gone from there, down like that, and back up. Happy days, yeah? At the time, everyone was shitting themselves. Afterwards, not so much of a problem. What then happened? Let me think. We had 1999. Well, what was so significant about 1999? Well, it was the millennium bug, wasn't it? Everybody thought the world was going to stop December 31, 1999, because computers wouldn't recognise the year 2000. It was the millennium bug. And it was a massive panic. The stock markets were depressed. People weren't going to invest. Inflows of cash into funds, investment funds. Nope. Most of it was coming out, going into cash or gilts, etc. Because there was a mass panic about the millennium bug. A whole load of fuss over nothing because most IT experts had gotten on top of it. But at the time, it was a worrying time, yeah? It affected stock markets. That's what we're talking about at the moment. Then what happened? Oh, we had 9/11. That wasn't a very good time for stock markets. Everybody, you know, planes flying around in the buildings. Nah, that wasn't very good. Oh, and then we had the London bombings, yeah? In London. Oh, sorry, Spanish guys, and in Spain. London and Spanish bombs, yeah? That affected the stock market. Now, why am I doing this brief history in time? This is why, guys, because people that say, oh, I want to buy property, not invest in the stock market, is it volatile? Holy shit, of course it's volatile. But now, excuse this very basic explanation. I haven't got any fancy graphics or anything like that, so I found a little bit of ribbon. Right, there's the stock market before the stock market crash in October 1987. There it is in July 1989. It had reached parity, yeah? Down the bottom here is Black Friday, the stock market crash, yeah? And we know from what I've told you, that the difference between before the stock market crash, in the stock market crash down there, and back up, happy days, is 1.6 years, yeah? And it's back up to where it was. That period of time of 1.5 years was a pretty crazy time. And you probably wouldn't have invested in the stock market. Now, if I, in my edit, can stick up a chart of the stock market over 20 years, before the crash and after, it'd have done that. And you wouldn't be able to, well, you barely see that in 1987, because over 20 years is bugger all. It's a mere blip, if anything. The same with all of these other periods of time that were significant when you were living through it, but in the fullness of time, they meant nothing. Stock market was down here, it's now up there. Why do I say that? Time rather than timing. Is the stock market investment? Is the stock market risky? You can bet your ass it is. Short term. Longer term, is stock market investment risky? Not necessarily, no. Over the longer term, all of that volatility is stretched out over a longer period of time. I've just explained it. So much depends on how much time you got to wait. Over a period of time, volatility drops because you can afford to wait it out. In much the same way, if you're living in Asia, sometimes it chucks it down with rain. And if you're waiting for the rain to go off, you've got two choices if you're like on a little moped. Do I just stick my helmet on? Always wear a helmet. Do I stick my helmet on and go home anyway and get wet? Or do I wait and wait and wait until the rain stops? But the rain might not stop. Same with volatility. It might go on for quite a while. Have you got time to wait around until the rain stops? It might not stop for 3 days, trust me. Especially in places like the Philippines. It might not stop for 3 days. Are you going to sit outside the store for 3 days until you go home? Nah, you're going to go home and get wet. But what happens if you went home and got wet, only for the rain to stop 10 minutes later? You think, oh shit, I wish I'd have waited because I could have got home dry. You just don't know. Is that a good example or not? I don't know, but you just don't know. So is stock market investment risky? Yes, it can be in the short term. Longer term, no, if you can afford to wait it out. It's not particularly risky longer term if you can afford to wait it out. Now, there is an argument, don't be too specific. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. A lot of people, when I talk about stock market investment, oh yeah, but I want to invest in property. A lot of people that are invested in the stock market and they don't like property, oh, why are you talking about investing in property? I'd rather be in the stock market, I can make more money. You talk to the new guys with cryptocurrency, what's the point in the stock market or property when I can make thousands in cryptocurrency? Well, yeah, you possibly could. What I'm saying is, you don't just have one topping on a pizza, do you? You can have stock market investment, you can have property investment. Let's move on to property now. I've made my point with regards to the stock market. Is it bad? No. Is it risky? Yeah. Is it any other riskier than property? Not necessarily. Not when you're an expat. Listen to me on this, because this is really important now. We're going to have a little bit of fun. Now we're talking about property. Guaranteed sure thing, right? Yeah, fantastic. Now, when you buy property, if you're wealthy, you can buy for cash, yeah? If you're very wealthy, high net worth client, becoming an expat, or you are an expat already, there's you as a high net worth individual, and you can afford to buy property anywhere. So you could afford to buy Spain, yeah, you could afford to buy in Portugal, you could afford to buy in Thailand, you could afford to buy in the Philippines, you could afford to buy in the USA, you could afford to buy in the UK, a lot of Russian oligarchs own property in the UK, you can afford to buy anywhere. And if any of these areas become poor, you don't like them, or the rules change, they move the goalposts, you take a hit on them, it don't really matter because you're high net worth. You've got your investments spread everywhere. It's irrelevant. So can high net worth clients own lots of property abroad? Yeah, of course they can. Drop in the ocean. However, most high net worth clients have got family practices and got a group of lawyers and financial advisors helping them out. A lot of offshore trusts, tax efficient trusts, all wrapped around everywhere. In trusts and foundations, etc. And they got a lot of people working for them. Probably not watching YouTube yet. At the end of the day, my channel's not catering for super high net worth clients. My channel and what my mission is, and I'm not angry, I'm passionate. My mission is to help the average person that's maybe worked all of their life and they're thinking about having a better life as an expat. And with that, hand in hand comes, let's cover my backside and look after the money that I've already got. Do I invest in property? Do I invest in the stock market? What risk do I take? Health, because that's a real biggie. Because I know in my experience with my international clients, the vast majority of them went back to their country of domicile with their tail between their legs when they got seriously ill. And the dream of being an expat soon went out the window. It's just life, yeah? You can't plan for every eventuality, but it's just life. They're British, they got money and they're living in Spain, they get sick. What do? Hightail it back to the UK. They're in Asia, what do? Hightail it back to the UK. They're American and they're in Asia and they get sick. What do? Hightail it back to America. I'm not saying, it's just what happens, and it's human nature. It's like nesting instinct. It's like, you know, it's just like running back to mummy when you've had an accident. Now, when you buy property, you can afford to buy for cash, great, fantastic. Otherwise, you take out a mortgage, yeah? Then you've got borrowing costs, because you're gearing. It's called gearing. You're borrowing money on a mortgage. Yeah, which is geared. You're borrowing money in order to invest. Now, if you want to get on the property ladder and you're younger, well, yes, of course. You got no other means to do it. You know, you're a working young couple, you want to build a home for yourself and maybe build a family. You ain't got a lot of choice. You kind of got to have a mortgage, yeah? But when you become an expat, are you going to borrow money to buy property abroad, which you can do in a lot of countries, or the country that you go to facilitates mortgages for expats? But you're gearing because you're borrowing money in order to invest in the property. That has risk. It's like borrowing money on your credit card to buy casino chips, because you're banking on the property going up in value. You're borrowing money to buy a house. Oh, well, property is always a sound investment. Is it? No, it's not. You ask people in the 90s, for example, in the UK, when there was a negative equity, because people were buying houses, let's say, although it's sterling, let's keep it to dollars, because most of my viewers are the US, but they were buying for, say, £100,000 or $100,000, kind of irrelevant, and they had mortgages of 95% loan to value. So they were borrowing 95,000 is the mortgage, that's the loan, yeah, against the property. And the house, they paid 100,000 with the developer, yeah? There's the 100K house. And what happened over a period of 6 months is house prices fell, and that 100,000 house was worth about 70,000. Negative equity. They got a loan of 95. The house is only worth 70. They got 25,000 negative equity. So what did these people do? Went to the mortgage, went to the lender, handed the keys back. Went to the bank, handed the keys back. There you go, not interested. Walked away from the house. Well, do you think banks are going to suck it up and take all that risk? I mean, they had to suck up some of the risk and take some of the risk because they lent the money. And their security is against the property. The banks messed up because they secured a 95,000 loan against the value of a house that was assessed at 100,000. But as we know, guys, with property, just like the stock market, with stocks and shares, whatever it's worth, you can sell it at that price. It's very liquid. Property is not liquid. Is that a risk? Yes, it is, because you can have assessed the value, and a valuer can pluck any figure out of thin air that comes out of his backside and what he thinks the house is worth. But a house or property is only worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it. And it's only worth that once the money is in your account. You've sold it and the cash is in your account, less any fees, legal fees, commissions for real estate brokers, etc. That is what it's worth in the end, in realistic value. Some of you need to get out of your ivory tower and think, oh, my house is worth, 100,000. No, it isn't. Because if you end up selling it for 70,000, it's only been worth 100,000 in your head. No, and you convinced yourself it's worth 100,000. It's only ever worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it. Same with profits on houses. My house has gone up in value by 100%, 200%. Yeah, great. If you sell it, otherwise it's just paper profit. I'm not being angry, I'm just being passionate. It's true. When cash is king, when it's in your account, then it's profit. So what did they do? They handed the keys back and they walked away. Well, tough for the bank. Their security on a 100,000 house is now security on a 70,000 house. So the bank has lost 25,000. But you're joint and severally liable. So these people that walked away and say the bank can take it on the chin, these people suffered bad credit ratings for the rest of their life. There was an area in Bristol where the property developers with the bank were in bed with the banks, providing all the loans for new developments, for like new subdivision. And the very large subdivision in Bristol was called Bradley Stoke. And the nickname for all of these buyers was Sadly Broke, rather than Bradley Stoke, because they were sadly broke. And they spent decades trying to get their credit ratings back. Miserable time. So you can't just hand your keys back. The reason I mention that, I'll come on to now, was a comment that I had from an American guy that's participated in the Malaysian scheme, MM2H, which is Malaysia My Second Home, which potentially is a good option. I've lived in Kuala Lumpur, so I'm relatively familiar with Malaysia, but his comment, which was quite derogatory, got me thinking, actually, hang on a minute, I'll do my homework a little bit, and let's just see if it's as good as it really should be. So I'm going to come on to that in a moment. Right, I've wiped my board clean, got another title now, Overseas Expat Property. Now this is important. I touched on a comment with regards to MM2H, Malaysia My Second Home. Now Malaysia has I lived in Kuala Lumpur, yeah, in KL Central for over a year, and Malaysia's fantastic. One of the frustrations with Malaysia is that, you know, obviously being British in the past, was that, you know, you look at Kuala Lumpur, it's like somebody picked up a load of spaghetti and just dropped it on the table and said, there you go, there's our roadmap. Because, you know, it's not like a lovely grid system like the Americans got, you know, great idea, you know, more makes a lot of sense. No, look at Kuala Lumpur, you can tell it had somebody designed it from somebody British designed it, because it's just an absolute mess. It's a rabbit warren. The traffic in Kuala Lumpur is horrible. But that being said, Kuala Lumpur's lovely, it's very charming, got great businesses in, where was the office I was at? Bansar, yeah, I think it was called. And you've got places that are very, very popular, which are more suburban, like Penang, which is kind of coastal, and got some lovely Georgian type architecture there, which is really nice, and it's very popular. And then you've got Ipoh, which is very, very sort of residential, subdivision-y type, with vast open spaces, which is lovely, and potentially ticks a lot of boxes. My Filipina ex, when she was pregnant with my son, we had healthcare, you know, checks and scans and everything else in Malaysia. Malaysian hospitals are fantastic. So yeah, that's great. Malaysian healthcare is reasonably good value for money. The country is relatively safe. It's welcoming. A lot of people are put off by the fact that the majority are Muslim. That's not a problem. They're very, very friendly. And if you go in, like where I lived in KL Central, you had Little India, and you used to go down there and you used to have amazing Indian curries just served on big metal dip plates. And you had like the rice and the curry and everything. You just to sit on a little plastic chair and just like street food, eat Indian curry. Oh, best curry you've ever had in your world. Absolutely fantastic. Little India in Malaysia. Brilliant. But Malaysia, like any country, is not perfect. Now, when you look at mortgage interest rates, yeah, you've got interest rates. That's a risk. Because if you're borrowing money to buy property overseas, interest rates are a risk. They can go up, they can go down. Like it, if they go down, it's good. But if they go up, not so good. You have liquidity as well. Liquidity is a risk. Because it's not easy. It's easy to buy a house, not so easy to sell it. The other thing, guys, that you need to be aware of as an expat, it's very easy to get money into places like Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia. Very easy to get money in. Not so easy to get money out. It's not. I had an instance like this when I sold a lovely condo in Nuklua, north of Pattaya in Thailand. And I had the original, they're called Tortor Sams, yeah? Tortor 3s. Nung Song Sam, yeah. Tortor 3s. And they are official documents proving for anti-money laundering regulations that I had the money coming in legitimately. So when I sold my condo, I should have been able to get all of the money out. I had receipts, Tortor Sams, for about, I think it was about 10 million peso, 10 million baht, something like that. But they only allowed me to take out a certain amount of money out of my account. And this is Siam Commercial. And even though I had receipts for the full amount, they wanted to keep money in my account. So it was a nightmare getting money out of the country eventually, even though it was legitimate. And trust me, anybody that's in Asia, a lot of countries, it's easier to get money in when you go through all of the clearing and anti-money laundering it's in the country, but it's very hard to get it out again in a lot of instances. There are some countries where there are exceptions. Of course there are. My job is just to make you aware that bringing money into a foreign country is not necessarily a problem. It's like, oh, happy days, come on in, yeah, welcome, because we want you to spend it. They want you to spend it. They don't want you to make any profit and take it out of the country. That's why easy in, hard out. Just something worth bearing in mind. Now focusing in on MM2H, yeah, MM2H. Malaysia, my second home. That's the acronym. One of the fantastic things, which sounds great, they've got great healthcare, foreigners, expats can own property in Malaysia, certain properties of certain values in certain areas. Certainly Penang, Kuala Lumpur, Ipoh, etc. You can buy property. There are certain restrictions. I think the minimum you have to spend is about 125,000 US, and there are different tiers. There's like a bronze, silver and gold tier for this MM2H. They all got various restrictions and minimum requirements, which you can look at if you're interested in Malaysia. I was going to say malaria there. Who's interested in malaria? Anyway, you can buy property, and let's say the minimum is 125k, yeah, US dollars. That's what you got to pay as a minimum you need to buy. And you need to invest, say, a minimum of 200,000, and of that, at least 125, you need to buy property. But in Malaysia, you can borrow from a Malaysian bank, loan to value up to like 80, I think it's 80% loan to value. You can borrow, you know, if you're US or British or whatever, Spanish, and you want to go to Malaysia, Malaysian banks, once you've gone through all the process and ticked all the boxes, filled out all the forms, you don't want to be in the Philippines because there'll be about 300 forms, which you've got to sign 3 times. But certainly in Malaysia, you can go through the process and apply. Loan to value, 80% loan to value. So they'll give you mortgages, and they'll give you mortgages for a certain period of time at interest rates of whatever they are. You are you are at risk. You're borrowing money. You're gearing. You are borrowing money to buy a property in a foreign country. That's my step back for you. Okay, this might be good for you, but never forget you're borrowing money from a bank to purchase property in a foreign country. Don't ever be under the misconception that as a foreigner, you got the same rights as a local citizen, because you never will have. Same applies as if you're in like an RTA, a road traffic accident. It's your fault unless you can prove otherwise. Why? Well, you're a foreigner. If you weren't there, the accident wouldn't have happened. So it is your fault. That's generally the attitude in Asia, unless you've got really good dash cams and you can prove it wasn't their fault. You know, seriously, you have not got the same rights as a citizen, and you never will have. That's kind of like one of the golden rules. Now, this sounds fantastic. I can borrow money, and this is one of the comments in one of my previous videos about, oh, I'm American and I've got a MM2H, you know, and I bought property in Malaysia and I can own property in Malaysia and I got a mortgage on it. And I actually thought, oh, actually, hang on a minute, mortgage from the US or from Malaysia? Now, I can't assume. You might have a mortgage from a lender in the US that's facilitated the purchase of a property in Malaysia. You might be, but chances are, because you've mentioned MM2H, it's a local bank lender in Malaysia that's lent you up to 80% loan to value, up to, you might not have borrowed that amount, to facilitate the purchase of a property in Malaysia. Well, that's good, you know. And you actually said, if there's any problems, I'll walk away from it. Well, okay, yeah, you might be able to. You know, I'm not condoning that attitude, because ultimately, there's a story about a British guy, yeah, who had a events and conference business in Dubai. And of course, nobody could predict COVID. What happened? He had a lot of creditors because he was setting up business and had all of these events going on. So all of the catering and stage equipment, lighting, sound and everything else, and the venues. And COVID hit. So all of these events were cancelled. But of course, he still had all of the businesses, the suppliers that he had to pay for, because they still wanted their money because they were suffering as well. So what did he do? Well, out of the goodness of his heart, his wife and his children that were British as well went back to the UK, and he stayed in Dubai in order to try and sort it out. You can't have debts as a business in Dubai. What happened? He's in jail. I don't know what his future was, but it's a well-known story. It's terrible. So be careful having debts in another country, because if you have debts and you're in Malaysia, then You've got to try and, as an expat, you've got to try and get out of the country. Okay, fine, you know, you might not think it's a good deal in the future and you might bugger off back to America and not settle that debt and just say, fine, it's their problem. Well, their businesses, if they take it on their chin, fine. Or they might, if they're a bank and they're getting really pissed off with you, they might go to America and try and get you extradited back to Malaysia to settle your debts. You don't know, you know, you're playing with fire. It's like juggling knives, that's what you're doing. Or playing Russian roulette. Who knows? At the end of the day, it's risky. So don't think that buying property this way is without risk. You say that it's not risky. Well, it is, because you've already told me that you got a mortgage. So you have already geared, because you're borrowing money to invest in another country. You can't tell me that isn't without risk, because it is. And you don't know what's going to happen with this. I've dug even a little bit deeper. Is this perfect? Hang on a minute. You can British or American, you can go to Malaysia. Some parts of Malaysia are fantastic for retirement and everything else. I get that. I'm thinking, actually, hang on a minute. I didn't think it was this flexible. I knew that there were some issues because when I lived in Malaysia, they were in the process of revising the MM2H scheme. They revised it even more and buggered it up. And that's why it's not so popular anymore. And there are caveats, which I've dug a little bit deeper for you guys so that you're aware of it. And you can do your own research and make up your own mind whether it's attractive for you or not. Because on paper, it would normally seem, well, this is a good deal. But it's not compared to the new regimes that they have for attracting foreign investors and wealthy expats in Thailand and Indonesia. They're all jumping on the bandwagon now because they want the rich people. MM2H are the same. They've rejigged the rules with regards to what you can and cannot do with MM2H. Like, for example, this is a biggie. This all sounds great, yeah? You have to have this is a kick in the nuts. You have to be there. That's greater than or equal to 10 years. You have to own that property for at least 10 years for it to be acceptable. So you can borrow money and do whatever you want, or you don't have to borrow money. You can just, you know, whack in a couple of $100,000 and buy your property and own it in Malaysia. You got to hold it for at least 10 years before you can sell it. Now, this comment from this American guy, he's like 62, and you think, well, okay, well, that's young nowadays, yeah, 62. God, you know, I won't be far until I'm 62. 10 years, so that means you're 72. Well, are you likely to be healthy then? Yeah. Can you guarantee me that? No, of course you can. Anything can happen. I've had clients before that I managed their money for, and when they retired, it was such a shock, they had a heart attack and died on the golf course at the age of like mid-60s. You just don't know. So you're 62 years old. In this example, with this comment that I had on one of my previous videos, 62 years old, and you're in good health, and you've done this. You've got to keep your property for at least 10 years. Well, certainly you have to now. But let's just take this analogy. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just getting you guys to actually, hang on a minute, ask yourself some questions. Look at the small print. Look at the caveats of these countries. And remember always, as an expat, you haven't got the same rights as a local. So when it all goes down the Swanee, goes down the toilet, you've got to think, actually, hang on a minute. Can I afford to do this or can I afford not to do it? You know, pays your money, it takes your chance. 62 years old, in good health, and you've got to hold the property for 10 years. What happens if after 2 years, you have a heart attack, cancer, stroke, or whatever, you don't feel very well, you want to go back to the USA, yeah? You want to go back to the USA. Because you've got a serious illness, yeah? You can't say that you won't have, because nobody knows that. Nobody's got a crystal ball. So you still got 8 years left. You can't sell that property. You're back in America suffering ill health. How happy are you to have a property in Malaysia? Don't ask me, ask yourself. Or you own it, you know, after 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. You're in Malaysia for 5 years, happy days, you know, you're probably not drinking because alcohol in Malaysia is crazy expensive because it's a Malaysian country. You can get it, but it's really expensive. But either way, irrespective, 62 years old, you're gambling. Property isn't without risk. This isn't without risk because 2, 3, 4 years down the line, so you still got, you know, 8, 7, 6, 5 years, you have to hold that property. Now, I don't know if the small print, if you can prove absolute serious health or terminal illness, they would allow you to circumvent that rule. I don't know, but what my gut, hence, you need to ask the questions. What happens if you get sick? What happens if you want to go back to America or the UK or somewhere else? And you're beholden to keep that property for the remainder of the 10-year term. Are you going to be happy to have that property in Malaysia? No, you're not, because it's just a millstone around your neck. It's a pain in the ass then. It doesn't become happy days anymore. It's a pain in the ass because it's very illiquid. Oh, but I can sell it. Well, you can't sell it, can you? So it's dead money. If you're wealthy, great, just wait it out. If you're wealthy, if you can afford to go back to the UK or the America and you just sit on it until the 10 years is up and then you can sell it. If you can afford to do that, sure, there's no problem. But not a lot of people that are expats are so wealthy that they can afford just to sit on a property. They're back in America not very well and they ain't worried about their property in Kuala Lumpur. You maybe rent it out or something else if you can to cover the mortgage, if you can rent it out, if you're allowed to do that. The lender, in a lot of instances, certainly in the UK, if you've got a mortgage on a MM2H scheme or like a mortgage on a residential property, you're not able to sublet it. It's not allowed within the terms of the loan. So you might not be able to rent it out. You might say, oh yeah, but I don't tell anybody, I'll just rent it out anyway. Well, yeah, but that might be against the terms of the loan. You might be doing that illegally, you know, whatever. Ask yourself these questions. What happens if you get sick and the shit hits the fan? What do you do then? Right, I've wiped my whiteboard down because I'm going to come on to that in a moment. Don't just take my word for these things. If somebody brings up something in the comments, I'm not having a go at them. I just want you guys to think outside of the box. Because us expats or potential expats are all in this together. So if we can start asking the right questions, there's no point in worrying about how much is a loaf of bread, how much is my Wi-Fi going to be, how much is the cost of electricity. If you don't get the fundamentals right first, planning in advance, proactive, yeah, that's what my whole website and my YouTube channel is about, yeah? Getting yourself, with mind maps, getting yourself to think outside of the box, ask yourself different questions, because it might really, really help you save a lot of money or make your expat journey that little bit more smoothly. That's great. I'm not angry, I'm passionate. God, I think that should be the strapline. Rather than naked expat stripped back to basics, it should be naked expat. Honestly, I'm not angry. Anyway, I found this on the Times, and this is a recent article with regards to the Malaysian MM2H. So for the people that have been commenting about it, here we go. It's not mine. This is straight from the horse's mouth with regards to the Financial Times. Foreign retirees have grown cold of the Malaysian My Second Home MM2H residency visa scheme, industry players say, after the latest revamped rules make it compulsory for them to purchase a property in the country and hold it for at least 10 years. That's like they got you by the balls, yeah? Even a new category of visa for residents in special economic zones or financial zones aimed at upcoming developments in Johor is unlikely to lift demand for the scheme, Economies told the Times. British national Mohammed, 41, who had wanted to retire in Malaysia with his 2 children, said he's changed his mind after the changes. I was interested in the silver 5-year visa scheme, and the mandatory property purchase does not make sense. And worst of all, requirement to hold it for at least 10 years. Under fresh guidelines released in June, qualified applicants are required to have deposits of between $150,000 and 1 million to be able to buy a property in Malaysia. They also need to hold the property for at least 10 years. This is interesting. Agencies that process applications for the residency scheme told the Times that they are seeing a significant decline in interest, with as many as 90% of prospective MM2H applicants losing interest since the new policy was announced on June the 14th. Initially, we had over 500 interested applicants, but the number has dwindled to less than 50. It's just whizzed down here. Other expatriate service agencies in the capital, which did not want to be named, said clients are disappointed with the new rules, particularly with the mandatory purchase of property, as they would be, and then with the minimum needed to be spent and visa dependent. We have lost about 90% of our clients. Our clients feel that the new guidelines are more strict than the 2021 guidelines. Now, however, when the MM2H scheme was first introduced in 2002, it attracted retirees. It brought in 48,471 foreign retirees, and of course all of their money coming in, with their spouses and dependents. However, significant rule changes in 2021 under the previous government hiked the level of investment needed and flip-flopped on visa conditions. The government's aim of releasing the latest guidelines is to attract high net worth individual and digital nomads, making Malaysia their top destination. A source close to the matter told the Times the government has revised the guidelines to change the profile of applicants to attract wealthy individuals to the country. They believe this is best for Malaysia. So far, the immediate reaction from would-be applicants has not been promising. It goes on to a little bit of statistical data, but the key thing here is the new MM2H residency scheme, which targets only high net worth individuals, will attract fewer expatriates, resulting in minimal impact on the economy. The new scheme will not add much value to the economy, despite the mandatory property purchase. The flip-flop in policies has already made people very cautious. Now, that's important, because as I've been harking on in the past, flip-flop of government guidelines, because don't forget, expats, you have not got the same rights as citizens in any country. You never have. And one of the key things, look, I lived in Thailand. I've lived in Thailand under a democratically elected government and a military takeover, a coup. Both. I think it's military now, isn't it? And whether it's you call it a democracy or not, things change. Malaysia, a lot of people like Malaysia because it's loosely based on the British legal system. You think, oh, well, that's good. Well, yeah, it is good. But look what happened with the Malaysian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Look at all the dodgy corruption and everything else, and the billions of dollars it just went missing. You know, it was like the personal bank account of all the politicians. No way. You know, you got to ask yourself these questions. It's not me. It's what's happened. What's all this about? Okay, well, anybody that knows their maritime history, you think about like a, I don't know, Zeebrugge ferry, or you look at the Costa Concordia, or you look at the Titanic, yeah? When you're on these boats, you're on the Titanic, are you worried about how many restaurants there are? Or are you worried about how many lifeboats there are? The Costa Concordia, are you worried about how many swimming pools there are? Or are you worried about the fact that the boat's sinking, you know? Don't sweat the small stuff, as they say, you know. When you're worried about the differences between investing in property, investing in stock market, don't sweat the small stuff. You're all individual, although we've got similar traits. It's important that you understand, as an expat, you haven't got the same rights. That should be right up there on the top of your list, yeah? What rights have you got, or lack thereof, as an expat in a particular country? In a lot of countries, you can't buy land, so people will buy it in their girlfriend, their partner's name. And of course, you know, as an investment, is that good? If the relationship lasts, well, good luck to you. You've circumvented local land ownership rules. A lot of instances, it doesn't work out, and you got to walk away from it with big losses. If you got loads of money, Harry Enfield, loads of money, then you might be able to take that on the chin. I've lost money in Asia with investments. I haven't always got it right. I've made money, I've lost money. And at the time, you try and do the best you possibly can, but you haven't got the same rights. And although I keep going back to it all the time, health is the biggie. If you're a young digital nomad and carefree and whizzing around the world and making money online, great. When you're older and you're getting retired, we get older, guys. Our bodies start to let us down. We can't do as much. I mean, I'm fitter now than I was before. I've done a few videos on that. But everybody gets older, you know. We want healthcare. We want good facilities. You want a nurse in the future to take care of you. You know, I know what you guys are thinking. And you can do that. I had a wonderful experience with an American guy who was in a wheelchair, and I stayed in this resort in Thailand. And I originally thought, oh, you dirty old man. You know, he was a retired vet, black American, in a wheelchair, and he had two Thai nurses, and they used to take care of him in every single way, and wash, cook, clean, and take care of him. And they used to wheel him out of his little villa to the swimming pool, and he used to have a little splash around, and they help him back out and dry him off, and he had a big smile on his face. And I got to know him over a few weeks, and he actually said to me, Andrew, you know what? I could never afford this type of TLC and this care back in the States. He'd just be left to vegetate. He was like one of the forgotten, you know. And I thought, you know what? Fair play to you. I don't blame you. So yeah, it's all about quality of life. You know, you can't take it with you, so why not enjoy it and have a good quality of life? Can you get that in a cheaper country, in a developing country like Thailand or whatever, or the Philippines? Yeah, of course you can. So why not do it? Definitely do it, yeah? But Health is the biggie, yeah? It's going to cost you a lot of money. If you get seriously ill, what are you going to do? Well, if you're in the Philippines, you might hightail it to Thailand where you've got a better selection of quality hospitals. Or you might have the money to get very good healthcare in the Philippines. It is available, but you've got to have deep pockets. Or you might want to go back to your country of domicile, like the UK or the USA, to get healthcare there. Health is the biggie, yeah? This is the real demon in the room. When it comes to property, and if you're hell-bent on buying property abroad, all I would say, if this is overseas property, and you want a house, whether you buy it in your name or not, whether you can own land, whether it's a condo, there are advantages and disadvantages of both. You might be paying top dollar. You might make money on it. Longer term, you might not. Just like, you know, if you buy in a Freeport zone in Philippines, it's only leasehold. It's only leasehold like the ones in Clark. You know, they got $2 million villas that you can buy. And the leases that are left on them are like 23 years. Got to pay $2 million for 23 years? Well, if you're in your 80s and you're loaded, you might think, well, that's all right, because it's going to be, you know, good enough for me. I'm not going to live another 25 years. But then it's gone. And although that lease is reviewable, it's reviewable at the discretion of the development corporation, the Clark Development Corporation, Bases Development Corporation, at the value that they deem it to be. And what are they going to do? They'll overvalue it in 23 years' time and say, all right, well, give us 10 million for it. And you'll be like, what? Even if you were alive, what? No good for your children or your grandchildren. It's no legacy at all. Some of the condos that you can buy, like my condo I owned in Thailand before, and some of the condos you can buy in Philippines are freehold, and you own them in perpetuity, which is great because you can pass it on to your generations, next generation. That could be a valuable investment if you want to go down the condo route. A lot of people don't like condos because they're generally quite noisy. You've only got to listen to the echoey corridors and everything else. And the management company got you by the balls as well, because they can charge you every month whatever they want, and they can change the rules whenever they want. And some of these condo developments have got 20,000 baht or 20,000 peso a month management fees. Why? Because you've got great security and everything else. But that's almost the cost of a mortgage. So, well, all of that craziness and maintenance and everything else, it makes a lot of sense sometimes. Not for everybody, guys. I'm not saying, oh, you got to buy overseas property. If you're a British expat, you got to buy property in the UK. You got to buy property elsewhere. No, all I'm saying is, it's a consideration to invest in bricks and mortar in a country where you can own it. Like if you're British, you've got rights. So buy property in the UK and rent it out if you want to. If you don't want to, fine. The absolute best thing you can do as an expat, there's the UK. There's the UK there. There's the USA there, yeah? That's the demographic of most people that are watching my YouTube channel. By the way, thank you very much. Now, or you might be Europe, yeah? You might be Europe. And here down here is fancy pants Asia, yeah? You might want to go to Asia, right? There's offshore. Now, what is what? You can stick all your money offshore. Yeah? And go and live in Asia. And from that offshore, you know, pot, let's call it your money pot, your assets are offshore. And you can access your assets. It's two-way, isn't it? So if you get sick in the future, you're living in Asia, you're going that way, but you get sick, and you're American, you want to go back to America, fine, but your assets are offshore. Who gives the monkeys? They're liquid assets. Stock, shares, gilts, bonds, whatever. Or if you're completely risk averse, have an offshore bank account, leave it in cash. Leave it in sterling, US dollars, euros, whatever, and just have offshore cash, which is a risk in itself, because as I said at the very beginning, not investing is also a risk because you've got inflationary risk. But if you've got loads of money, if you've got 5, 10, 15 million euros, sterling or US, who gives a shit about your return? You might not want your money to work hard for you. You're satisfied with what you got, in which case, leave it in cash. Don't buy property, don't buy anything. And whatever you just dip into it when you want it. Go and live in Asia. If your health fails, go back to America. Or, you know, if your health fails, go back to the UK. Your money's offshore, ring fenced, doesn't matter where you are. Very liquid, very flexible, yeah? Works, makes a lot of sense. It might not be the right thing for you. I'm just telling you guys, think about it, yeah? Think liquidity is king, cash is king, yeah? Always, because your health, your circumstances might change. Best thing you can do if you want to be an expat, go and live there for like 1 to 3 years. Renting, you know? Rent. As I said in a funny little short, be a rent boy. But I mean it. Rent for 1 to 3 years offshore, yeah? In wherever you want. Because you might go to the Philippines and meet a lovely woman and the woman of your dreams. And it does happen. But you might not want to live in the Philippines. You might think, oh, it's not really as I want it. We went to Thailand for a while and it's great there. We went to Bali in Indonesia. I love my girlfriend. I want her to be my fiance or wife. But I'd rather be in... You might want to be in Malaysia. You might want to be in Bali, Indonesia. You might want to be in Thailand with your Filipino partner. So you're a potential expat focusing in on the Philippines. But when you got here, all of a sudden you fell in love, met the person of your dreams. You don't really want to be here anymore. You want to be with her, but you don't necessarily want to be in the Philippines anymore. In which case, your circumstances have changed. Don't go committing yourself in the first couple of years to buying a condo or buying land in her name or whatever, you know. Rent, really get to know the area. Yeah, this is logic for anybody, you know. Just like Warren Buffett said, if you want to make a good investment, walk down the high street and see what businesses are active. See if they've got good customer service. Are they busy? Are people going in there and spending money, or are they just window shopping? Boots on the ground. Same with finding a girlfriend. Boots on the ground, yeah? See it for yourself. And then if you've experienced that company, it's got good customer service, it seems really efficient, they're not out of stock of stuff, the store is always busy. Hello, Sherlock, probably a good investment. It's probably a well-run business, in which case it probably justifies your investment and buying stocks and shares in that particular company. Warren Buffett ain't stupid, is he? Come on, guys, you know. And he hasn't bought and sold loads of property. He runs Berkshire Hathaway, yeah? And he bought Coca-Cola shares back in probably when Coca-Cola still had cocaine in it. You know, he bought Barclays shares, Coca-Cola shares, like back in the 1950s or whatever, and then sat on them. And exponentially watched them grow and grow and grow in value with share splits and divisions and everything else, and owns massive amount, you know. Sit on it and wait. Sit on it and wait. Same with stock market investments. Sit on it and wait. It's all about time, not timing, yeah? We did it in the past, yeah. There's what it is over 1 to 3 years. It's like a bloody roller coaster, the stock market. But over 1 to 20 years, whoosh, it's like that, pretty much. Great, everybody wants that. It's like launching off a platform. Are you going to make money there? Yeah. Are you going to shit yourself there? Yeah, of course you are. But in the longer term, not necessarily a problem. Same with property. In the longer term, not usually a problem. The issue is, the fly in the ointment is, do you actually own it? And do you trust the legislation? And funny enough, governments change. You had the Labour government, the Conservative government, maybe even Reform government in the future in the UK. Different attitudes to social care, property ownership. Different attitudes about the rich get richer, or let's punish the rich. Now they're talking about introducing an even higher rate tax bracket for the wealthy people because they need more taxes in the UK to fund infrastructure and social care. Well, is that going to work? No, because what's high net worth clients going to do? They're going to bugger off. They're going to, excuse my language, they're going to say, fuck this, we're going to go and live in Dubai where we're not taxed on anything. So you got to be careful. You got to play the system. They got to tax the high net worth people in the UK, but not too much. Otherwise, you're just going to disappear. They're going to live in Monaco. Where they're not taxed. They're going to go and move because they're very transient. Yeah. As an expat, you're transient. You don't necessarily need to be a millionaire. Go and live and rent in Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, Bali. Go and rent for 1, 2 or 3 years and get the lowdown, you know, do your reconnaissance, really get to know the area. And you'll notice that the area changes over 1, 2 or 3 years. My God, I've been in the Philippines 12 or 13 years. It's changed dramatically over that period of time. There was hardly any infrastructure in there before. Now it's booming everywhere. Build, build, build. Things do change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. But boots on the ground, 1 to 3 years, really get a feel for the place and really ask yourself, do I want to live the rest of my life here? Do I want to commit enough capital? If you're wealthy, buying a house for 100,000 US dollars or 200,000 US dollars might not be a problem for you in Asia. Great, you got options. You know, money talks. You got options. It's only a percentage of your wealth. But some expats potentially buying property, moving abroad, these decisions are big, and these decisions can have life-affecting change on you, not necessarily always for the good. I know expats that have lost all of their money through poor investments, bad relationships, etc. It does happen. So best to ask yourself these questions first. Really get to know an area. You know it makes sense. 1 to 3 years, get a lowdown, figure out the area, and then really ask yourself the question, actually, hang on a minute. Do I want to drop 100, 200k US dollars on a property? Am I going to be happy here for the rest of my life? Or can you get away with living in a similar property? You don't own it, but there's plenty of property around the area to rent, in which case you can leave all your money offshore because you're getting older. We all get older. And if you've got a lot of money tied up in property, ain't a lot of good if you're sick. You can't do a lot with it. Sometimes it's hard to sell. Also, depending on what country you're in, there might be tax implications if you suddenly sell it. If you're in Malaysia, you might not be able to sell it, because of the constraints under the visa scheme. So things change. Governments change. Governments can go from very pro-expat to very anti-expat. Things change. Governments change. Attitudes change. Finally, ask the Chinese. A lot of Chinese millionaires and billionaires. We know that. A lot of money in China. Is all their money in China? Well, not if they can help it. Look at Russia. Look at all the Russian oligarchs owning property in places like London and abroad. Is all their money in Russia? No, it's not. Why? Because they don't trust the governments, do they? No, they don't. Ask the Chinese about property investment in their country. Booming Beijing and Shanghai. Look at all of the other ghost towns in China. I'm sure it's not escaped your notice that there's been a lot of Chinese people that have bought, and expats, that have bought property in China as an investment, and they're ghost towns. They've been finished and nobody lives in them. Thousands and thousands of condos, apartments and everything else. And all of these developers have been in trouble. The vast majority of them, I think one of the largest ones is Everard, isn't it? They're technically bust. And a lot of these companies are being kept afloat just purely because the Chinese government want to save face, being kept afloat artificially by the government in order to try and give this facade of successful company. But Chinese property has got serious issues. Ask Asians what it was like in the Asian crisis. Ask people what happened in the Philippines with Mount Pinatubo, or the properties in Angeles City and all around Pampanga. Nobody wanted them. Crazy things do happen. Don't be naive and think buying property, you're onto a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. You're not always. It is risky. A lot of people think that property is without risk. You're absolutely wrong. Not investing in the stock market is without risk because you might miss the boat. Not investing in property is a risk because it has proven long term to be a good investment. But not always. Don't think it's a golden egg because it isn't. Because all this being said, you haven't got many rights as an expat in another country. Of course you haven't. Your health might be good now, but it might not always be. In which case, cash is king. Always will be. Don't overcommit yourself. And for most people, buying property is a big commitment, unless you're very wealthy. So, for a lot of expats, you've got to be really careful tying up your money in bricks and mortar, if your property's built with bricks and mortar. What I'm saying is, ask yourself these questions, because they are important. And that's the message that I'm trying to get across. I don't give a monkeys how much your Wi-Fi is going to be. I don't give a monkeys how much it costs to buy a tray of eggs or bananas or whatever. I don't care whether you find a girlfriend, partner or not. I want everybody to be happy. But ultimately, it's sort of irrelevant if you ain't got the basics sorted out. Financial planning falls into protecting your assets and protecting your ass. A lot of things can go right being an expat. A lot of things can go wrong. As we all know, guys, fail to plan, plan to fail. And it can go horribly wrong for you. This sort of channel will help you because it will get you asking the right questions for you, for your circumstances. I don't know what they are. Other people's circumstances might be different. Buying property might be a good option for you longer term. It might turn out to be the most wonderful thing you've ever done. Great. It could also be absolute nightmare and terrible. Also, changes in governments, changes in legislation, wars. Look at the effect that, whether or not you're, pro Donald Trump or not. Look at the effect of the trade tariffs. Look at the massive trade tariffs that are imposed on Thailand and Vietnam and stuff. How's that going to affect those local economies in the future? What's that got to do with being an expat? Well, if you live in Vietnam, it damn well has, because nobody might not have any money, in which case it's going to put pressure, adverse pressure on the property market. Not a lot of good if you own a condo, is it? So, ladies and gentlemen, think about these things. It is about liquidity, it is about movement of assets, it is about your health, how quickly you can go in and out of a country. It's not easy. As I said, it's easy to get money into a country, not so easy to get money out. Property is illiquid. It's not without risk. Stock market isn't without risk. A lot of people can benefit from what I've said. If none of it is any use to you, I'm sorry for wasting your time. If one little snippet helps you to avoid a potential catastrophe, then fantastic. That's all I'm trying to do. And you guys can either take it or leave it. You know, I'm passionate about this because I don't want people to make massive mistakes that can be avoided, because there's a lot of people out there that can shaft you. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I hope you found this video somewhat informative. And if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe and hit the notification button. It does help my channel, helps me to get my message, if you believe in my message, out to more people. Thank you so much. Enjoy.